Many people spend years believing they are making incredibly smart financial choices, only to discover they are quietly sabotaging their own future. There are 5 invisible, subconscious, wealth killing mistakes that can absolutely drain your potential net worth without you even noticing. When you sit down and actually run the math on these seemingly harmless daily habits, the long-term damage is staggering. Some of these common missteps can easily erase $800,000 or more over the span of a standard working career. The most frustrating part? Every single one of these financial leaks is completely avoidable once you know what to look for. By breaking down these hidden traps, the goal is to map out exactly how to protect your capital and ensure that your money is actually working to build a fortress of wealth. Recognizing these patterns early is the ultimate difference between retiring with absolute abundance and constantly wondering where all your hard-earned income vanished. Let's dive right into the very first hidden trap that catches so many ambitious young investors off guard. The first major hurdle is falling victim to the toxic all-or-nothing mentality, where the prevailing thought is that if you cannot get rich overnight, building wealth simply isn't worth the effort. There is a pervasive illusion that slow, steady compounding is a sucker's game. When the modern financial landscape is heavily skewed by sensational stories of overnight success, standard investing begins to look incredibly unappealing. You look around and see people desperately trying to catch the next massive wave, fully convinced that standard wealth-building tactics belong in the past. This mindset tricks individuals into sitting on the sidelines, waiting for a mythical perfect pitch that guarantees a massive instant return. The danger here is that by rejecting the proven gradual approach, people completely miss out on the most powerful wealth-generating engine available to them. Time in the market is replaced by a restless, anxious search for a shortcut that rarely ever materializes. To understand why this happens, you have to look at the cultural environment surrounding modern tech booms and highly publicized initial public offerings. Whenever major technology platforms go public, the media is flooded with stories of early employees and lucky seed investors walking away with millions of dollars. This creates a deeply distorted financial reality for the average person watching from the outside. It fosters the dangerous belief that the only legitimate way to achieve true financial freedom is to miraculously land a job at a unicorn startup right before it explodes in value, or to launch a business that gets acquired by a massive conglomerate. When those extreme lottery ticket scenarios are plastered across every financial news outlet, the concept of slowly accumulating assets feels fundamentally inadequate. It breeds an entire demographic of young professionals who completely dismiss traditional market participation because it doesn't offer the immediate dopamine hit of a massive corporate exit. This leads directly to the complete neglect of broad market index funds during the most critical wealth-building years. An average historical return of roughly 8% is frequently mocked as being too boring or too slow for a generation conditioned by extreme volatility. Instead of letting compound interest do the heavy lifting over several decades, there is a massive shift toward high-risk speculative moonshots. People attempt to throw their savings into hyper-volatile cryptocurrencies, hoping for a miraculous 100x return. Or worse, they get dragged into the endless cycle of sports betting. We are even seeing a rise in bizarre prediction markets, where capital is risked on random binary outcomes, like betting on political gridlock or predicting the exact high temperature in a major city on a Tuesday. By chasing these wild adrenaline rushes, people forfeit the silent, relentless power of long-term market growth, fundamentally misunderstanding how true generational wealth is mathematically structured. Let's look at the devastating math of this hesitation using a realistic baseline. Imagine a young professional making an average starting salary of around $50,000 a year, keeping living costs low to save a decent portion of their income. If they simply invested $600 a month, which equals $7,200 annually, that would total $36,000 over a 5-year period of sitting on the sidelines. If that relatively modest $36,000 were deployed into a basic S&P 500 index fund and left completely untouched, the power of compound interest would take over. By the time that individual reaches age 65, that initial seed money could easily balloon into anywhere from $850,000 to well over $1.2 million, depending on the exact long-term interest rates. The cost of inaction is colossal. Waiting for the perfect glamorous opportunity guarantees a 0% return, and 0% compounded over 40 years is still zero. Deciding to do nothing is an active financial choice that carries an immense, life altering price tag. The second subconscious trap is operating entirely out of a profound scarcity mindset, which essentially weaponizes the fear of losing money against your own financial growth. Consider the classic scenario where someone insists on keeping an excessively massive buffer, say $40,000, sitting idle in a standard low yield checking account at all times. When questioned, the justification is always anchored in pure defense, the belief that extra cash equals absolute safety and that hoarding liquidity is the ultimate protection against an unpredictable world. This obsession with stockpiling raw currency often bleeds into everyday lifestyle choices, where people refuse to spend money on tools or experiences that would genuinely improve their quality of life. They might endure uncomfortable living conditions, skip heating in the winter, or refuse basic conveniences, all in the name of accumulating more uninvested cash. It is a restrictive perspective that treats money as a finite, fragile resource to be guarded rather than a powerful tool to be deployed. What often goes unmentioned in modern financial discourse is that these deeply entrenched money behaviors are frequently inherited directly from previous generations. A scarcity mindset is rarely developed in a vacuum. It is usually passed down from parents or grandparents who survived severe economic depressions, political instability, or extreme poverty. When a family history is defined by financial trauma, the logical survival mechanism is to hoard whatever resources become available. If you grow up watching authority figures distrust the financial markets and prioritize cash under the mattress over stock certificates, you naturally absorb that exact same financial blueprint. You carry those defensive habits into your own professional life, completely unaware that you are playing by an outdated set of survival rules. Recognizing that your financial fear is actually an inherited trait is the crucial first step to breaking the cycle and stepping into a modern data-driven approach to actual wealth generation. Once you step back and objectively analyze historical financial data, the massive opportunity cost of this hoarding mentality becomes painfully obvious. The broader market has consistently delivered average annual returns of roughly 8 to 10% since 1926. To truly internalize this, you have to look at standardized investment studies comparing different market strategies over a 20-year horizon. Imagine consistently investing $3,000 every single year. The data repeatedly proves that whether you have incredible timing, terrible timing, or simply dollar cost average into the market, you will massively outperform the person who leaves their $3,000 a year sitting completely in cash. Even the most unlucky investor in the stock market ends up with a significantly larger portfolio than the extreme cash hoarder. The strategic move is to build a rational emergency fund covering 3 to 6 months of vital living expenses, and then immediately put the rest of that capital to work in a globally diversified portfolio. The third major wealth killer is successfully saving money but giving it absolutely zero specific intention or purpose. It is entirely possible to overcome the initial fear of investing, set aside a solid chunk of capital, and still fail to optimize it because the money simply lacks a definitive job. Imagine looking at a healthy bank balance, but having no concrete framework for what those dollars are actually meant to achieve. Without clear directives, large sums of cash end up floating aimlessly in low-yield accounts, simply because of lingering irrational fears. The money isn't legally earmarked for a real estate down payment, it isn't officially designated for launching a small business, and it isn't scheduled for a brokerage transfer. It merely exists in a state of financial purgatory, earning effectively 0% interest while simultaneously losing its purchasing power. Money without a strictly defined mission becomes lazy money, and lazy money actively prevents you from reaching higher financial tiers. Fixing this requires you to treat your personal finances like a highly efficient corporate structure, where every single dollar is viewed as an employee that must be assigned a specific productive task. Let's say you have accumulated $50,000 in savings. A logical first step is calculating your true 6-month survival threshold. Perhaps that strictly requires $15,000. That portion gets assigned to the Emergency Defense Department. The remaining $35,000 must be given an immediate job description. It could be targeted for a future property acquisition within the next 3 years, or it must be aggressively deployed into the market. Simply keeping it just in case is no longer an acceptable financial strategy. Speaking of strategies, I'm curious to know, what specific financial milestone are you actively deploying your capital toward right now? Let me know your current goal in the comments below. And while you're down there, make sure to like and subscribe if you are finding this breakdown valuable. The ultimate shift happens when you stop viewing your savings as a static safety net and start treating your personal finances like a highly efficient corporation. In this business model, you are the CEO, and every single dollar you earn is an employee under your command. If you leave tens of thousands of dollars sitting aimlessly in a basic checking account, you essentially have a massive workforce just sleeping at their desks. They aren't producing anything, they aren't generating new revenue, and over time, they actually become less effective. You need to assign specific jobs to every portion of your wealth. Some dollars are your defensive guards, that's your emergency fund, sitting in a high-yield savings account ready to deploy if disaster strikes. Other dollars are your aggressive growth team, invested heavily in diversified index funds to capture long-term market gains. When you give every single dollar a definitive purpose, you eliminate financial waste. The goal is to build an automated, self-sustaining system where your money works tirelessly around the clock, generating passive income while you sleep. This brings us to the fourth hidden wealth killer, which is entirely external: the people you spend the most time with. There is a silent, invisible financial ceiling created by your immediate social circle. If your regular environment consists of friends who never discuss investing, entrepreneurship, or wealth building, it simply doesn't register as a priority in your brain. When the weekend conversations revolve entirely around the latest video games, nightlife, or spontaneous spending, the concept of long-term financial planning gets completely drowned out. You are subtly conditioned to believe that living paycheck to paycheck and optimizing only for immediate entertainment is the normal way to operate. No one is maliciously trying to hold you back, but a lack of financial literacy within a friend group acts as an anchor. When no one around you is normalizing the act of investing, you naturally adopt that exact same passive behavior. You cannot outgrow an environment that constantly reinforces stagnation, which is why evaluating your inner circle is a critical step in taking control of your financial destiny. The transformation happens the moment you immerse yourself in an environment where discussing money is completely normalized. Imagine shifting from a group that only talks about weekend expenses to a community that casually discusses the performance of different exchange-traded funds, portfolio rebalancing, and long-term asset allocation. Hearing people talk about their investment strategies, market trends, and compound interest forces you to elevate your own financial awareness. It turns the abstract, intimidating concept of investing into an everyday accessible topic. You start asking better questions, researching new asset classes, and challenging your own limiting beliefs about wealth. This is the exact reason why financial professionals tend to build wealth faster, not because they possess a secret formula, but because they are constantly surrounded by the language of growth. You have to actively seek out spaces where ambition is encouraged. Just by seeking out educational financial content and engaging with these concepts, you are already taking massive steps toward upgrading your wealth building environment. If you look at your current circle and realize that no one is having these crucial conversations, you do not need to abandon your friends, but you absolutely must expand your network. You have to purposefully inject yourself into communities where financial growth is the primary focus. Today, that is easier than ever through dedicated online forums, specialized social media groups, and localized meetup events centered around real estate or stock market investing. You want to be the least knowledgeable person in the room so that you are forced to learn and adapt. Start engaging with people who are already where you want to be in 5 or 10 years. By actively participating in these spaces, you replace that invisible money ceiling with a launch pad. The conversations you have on a daily basis directly influence the financial decisions you make. So upgrading your social inputs is one of the highest return investments you can possibly make. If you are serious about changing your trajectory, you have to curate an environment that demands financial excellence rather than settling for comfortable mediocrity. The fifth and perhaps most insidious, subconscious wealth killer is being risk-averse in completely the wrong way. It is entirely natural to be afraid of losing your hard-earned money, especially when news outlets constantly highlight stock market volatility and economic downturns. If your core financial memory is anchored to a major recession or a sudden market crash, the idea of putting your savings into equities feels deeply irresponsible. This creates a paralyzing fear of short term losses, leading people to believe that the ultimate financial strategy is to avoid the market entirely. They view investing as gambling, assuming that keeping their capital perfectly still is the only way to keep it safe. But this perspective is fundamentally flawed because it hyper-focuses on the visible risk of market fluctuations while completely ignoring a much more dangerous, invisible threat. By desperately trying to avoid a temporary drop in portfolio value, hyper-conservative savers unknowingly lock themselves into a permanent, guaranteed loss of wealth over their lifetime. That invisible threat is inflation, and it is the absolute destroyer of uninvested capital. While stock market crashes are loud, dramatic, and temporary, inflation is silent, relentless, and permanent. Historically, inflation continuously erodes the purchasing power of fiat currency by an average of about 2.5% to 3% every single year. When you choose to keep your entire net worth in cash because it feels safe, you are essentially accepting a guaranteed negative return on your money. Over the span of a 24-year period, a steady 3% inflation rate will literally cut the actual buying power of your savings in half. $100,000 hidden safely in a checking account might still read as $100,000 on a screen decades later, but it will only buy $50,000 worth of real-world goods. It is a slow-motion financial bleed. What feels like a protective, conservative strategy is actually a slow surrender to the rising cost of living, fundamentally destroying your ability to maintain your lifestyle in the future. This profound misunderstanding of risk is why the wait and see approach is so incredibly destructive. If you are currently sitting on a massive pile of cash, waiting for the supposedly perfect macroeconomic conditions, or hoping for the market to feel less chaotic, you need a serious reality check. You are not avoiding risk, you are simply trading the temporary risk of market volatility for the absolute certainty of inflation risk. But the damage does not stop there. You are also suffering from massive opportunity cost. Every single day that your capital is not invested, it is missing out on the compounding growth that standard market returns provide. You are hit with a devastating double penalty. Your cash is actively losing its value due to inflation, while simultaneously failing to capture the historical upward trajectory of the global economy. To build real generational wealth, you must accept that true financial safety does not come from hoarding cash. It comes from owning appreciating assets that outpace the cost of living over the long run. Overcoming these 5 subconscious wealth killers requires a radical reconstruction of your financial psychology. You have to permanently abandon the toxic desire for overnight riches and embrace the incredible, undeniable power of long-term compound interest. You must actively unlearn the inherited scarcity mindset that tells you to hoard cash out of fear and replace it with a strategic, data-driven approach to asset allocation. It requires giving every single dollar a crystal clear mission so that your money is always working harder than you are. Furthermore, it demands that you elevate your environment, surrounding yourself with individuals who normalize wealth building and challenge you to think bigger. And finally, you have to redefine your relationship with risk, understanding that the only true path to financial security is putting your capital to work in the markets to outrun inflation. Mastering these invisible psychological shifts is the ultimate separator between those who struggle financially and those who build unshakable, lasting wealth. Real wealth isn't just about making a high income. It is about plugging the invisible leaks that quietly drain your potential. Over a lifetime, once you identify these subconscious traps, you gain the power to reverse them. You transition from playing defense with your money to playing strategic offense. Whether you are just starting out or you have been sitting on cash for years out of fear, the best time to pivot is right now. Analyze your current behaviors, audit your accounts, and ask yourself, which of these 5 traps is currently holding you back the most? Financial literacy is a continuous journey, and the fact that you are actively seeking out this information proves that you are already on the right path. As you implement these changes, you will start to see the momentum shift in your favor. Your net worth will stop being a source of anxiety and will transform into a tool that buys you ultimate freedom. So, take action today. Assign a job to your idle cash and let the math work its magic over the coming decades. The journey to true financial independence is a marathon, not a sprint, and it requires constant vigilance against the psychological traps that try to pull you back into comfortable mediocrity. By recognizing the dangers of the get-rich-quick mentality, the inherited scarcity mindset, lazy unassigned capital, uninspiring environments, and toxic risk aversion, you are arming yourself with the ultimate defensive playbook. You now have the exact blueprint to protect your capital and ensure it grows efficiently in the background while you focus on living your life. Implementing these mindset shifts might feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you are breaking decades of conditioned habits. But the mathematical payoff at the end of your career will be absolutely life-changing. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so tell me in the comments below which of these 5 subconscious wealth-killing habits do you struggle with the most, and what is your immediate plan to fix it? Let's build a community of action takers. See you in the next video, and remember, stay smart with your money, take care.